Välkomna till Se människan-scenen. Nu ska vi få lyssna till ett panelsamtal mellan 4 religiösa kvinnliga ledare. Samtalet leds av Lars Mogensen, journalist. Jämställdhet är ett av temana på bokmässan. Varsågod.
Det kanske inte har framgått av programmet helt och hållet, men vi kommer att ha det här samtalet på engelska. Det beror på att vi kommer från lite olika länder och att alla måste förstå varandra. Jag hoppas att det ska funka för alla. You can't hear me? Ni som sitter längst bak, hör ni mig? Ni som sitter längst fram, förstår ni vad jag säger? Bra. Vår fader, du som är i himmelen. That's how it is pronounced in Swedish in the Christian tradition. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Padre nuestro que está en el cielo. That's how it sounds in Spanish. God above is undoubtedly a male figure. The Lord is my shepherd. Herren är min herde. And the shepherd is usually a man. So I guess it's old news that in most religions, traditionally, men have been in power, male language has been used. But it's almost 2020 now, and the times they are changing, according to Bob Dylan. At this seminar, we'd like to look into how quickly things are changing and in what directions. My name is Lars Mogensen, as you just heard, and I'm a journalist, and I've been asked to moderate this discussion. I'm very happy to have a wonderful panel here, so please welcome the leader of the Mariam-moskén in Copenhagen, the first mosque in Scandinavia where all imams are women, Sherin Khankan. We have Ute Steyer, the first female rabbi in Sweden, over here to my left. Madeleine Fredell, she's a Dominican sister and the Secretary General of the Justice and Peace Commission in the Catholic Diocese of Sweden. And Antje Jackelén, the first female Archbishop of the Church of Sweden, well known. Let's start somewhere. What would you say, Sherin, how strong of a position do women have in your context? You've started a mosque of your own with the women imams. How strong of a position do you have?
When we started the mosque in Copenhagen with only female imams, a lot of Muslims said that this is a reformation, but actually it's not. We have female imams in China since the 1820s, in US, in Canada, in Switzerland, in Germany, and recently in France as well. But the mosque in Copenhagen is the first mosque in Scandinavia with female imams. It's also a part of our Islamic tradition and history. At the time of the Prophet in Medina in year 600, the Prophet actually appointed a woman named Waraka to lead the prayer for her household and her house mosque. At that time, we didn't have official mosques as we know them today, but the mosques were in houses, in different houses. And she was the most excellent in reciting and very famous for her knowledge in Islam. And after the Prophet died, at least 2 women called to prayer in the house mosque of the Prophet, the first house mosque in the Islamic civilization.
Who were they?
It was Aisha and Salama. So, and if you want to look deep into the sources behind these stories, it's a biographical lexicon written by a historian called Ibn Sa'd. It consists of 8 volumes, and the 7 volumes are only about the men who followed the Prophet in Medina, but the 8th volume is only about the women. And in these 8 volumes, you will find these hadith, written narratives of what we believe the Prophet said and did about all these great women.
But you had to start a mosque of your own in order to achieve something which was not possible within the other mosques.
Yes, in the beginning we tried to enter existing mosque communities, and we asked for permission to come and deliver the sermon in the existing mosques. But we were denied the right to enter the chair. And then we decided that if we really want to create change, we just have to do it. We have to create our own mosque and establish a mosque from scratch and make it possible for women to be female imams.
Thank you, Sherin. Madeleine Fredell, a Dominican sister. How strong of a position do you have as a Catholic woman?
Well, it depends on where you look. And power is one thing, influence is another thing. We do not have power that is exclusive for ordained persons, and they're only ordained men as priests, bishops, and so on.
Ordained is prästvigd,
yes.
Right?
But you can have influence, and you can certainly have a high job position in the church locally. But if you go to Rome and you look at the dicasteries, that's like state departments for different issues, the head is always a man because he has to be ordained. You can have position as number 3 and 4 and so on. But when you look at the Catholic Church, it's also a culture, a specific Byzantine culture. So you can have influence if you know people, but you do not have power. And you do not always know where that power is. And that makes it a bit difficult to change also.
So there's no formal power for a woman within the Catholic Church?
Well, within the religious orders, we have power in one way. We decide our own matters. And locally, the bishop of a diocese cannot say anything to a religious sister belonging to an institute with pontifical rights. It's only the Pope who can intervene in such a case. So a bishop can make my life horrible in one way, but he cannot decide over me.
Does he make your life horrible sometimes?
Sorry?
Does he make your life horrible sometimes?
Well, you know, we have different opinions. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Would it be possible for you to do like Sherin, start your own community?
No. If I start my own parish or community in that sense, I would be outside of the church, legally speaking. What many of us women in the Catholic Church are fighting for, we are fighting for being ordained. We are fighting for giving the homily, the sermon, during Mass.
Predikan eller så?
Yes, to preach. We can preach in many contexts, but not during Mass. And it's very important that we can speak and be heard in the Catholic Church. It's about culture, to change a culture which is continuously silencing women in many, many respects.
What is that?
We also have the other side from the religious orders, the monasteries, where women have been able to speak for centuries, since the Middle Ages, in fact. It's a very tricky system because you can have influence somewhere and on other points it's nothing.
Antje Jackelén, Madeleine speaks about being silenced as a woman within the Catholic Church. In the Swedish Church of Sweden, what is it, 30, 40, 50% of the priests are women. Are women still silenced here too?
Well, yeah, if you look at the numbers and what you see, we are, in fact, much better off. When you look at the current leadership of the Church of Sweden, it's not only that you have a female archbishop, even the chair of the General Synod is a woman, the vice chair, so my vice chair in the central board of the church is a woman, the highest official in the administration is a woman. So in that sense, what more can you aim for? But on the other hand, we can't take these things for granted. We have, church is part of the world, and in all the world, also in Swedish society, actually, there is like this background noise of patriarchy. And I would say globally, what we are watching is like the death pangs of patriarchy, to put it a little bit provocative. So and that means that we also see backlash in several respects. But from the point of view of the church, I guess the advantage we have is with in the Lutheran branch of the church, you have this strong notion of everyone who's baptized also has a calling to be sort of a priest, the priesthood of all believers, to minister to others, to preach the gospel in the way you can do it, also as a lay person in words and deeds. And I think that has provided for quite a strong democratic structure in the church, which has been positive in fostering gender justice. But gender justice, even globally, keeps to be an issue to have your eyes upon.
When you mentioned the death fight of patriarchy, or whatever you said, I understand that there are some of the most conservative people that are leaving the Church of Sweden and going to the Catholic Church instead. Is that right?
It's right, unfortunately.
Sorry.
So, what happens to your Catholic communities? Are they more conservative than the rest of Europe?
In a minority situation, you always risk to have more conservative communities. And I think that is true for all religions, in fact. You are fighting for certain things, and it tends to close in on itself. When I am abroad, when I am with my sisters in other countries, I feel a much bigger liberty and a possibility to speak in other ways. Next week, for example, I'm going to Rome, and I'm going to claim the voting right for sisters as in bishops' synods, and I'm going to claim the right to give the homily.
What will they say?
Sorry?
What will the answer be, do you think?
I won't get any answer, but they will listen.
Okay, that's good. Okay, and Ute Steyer, the first female rabbi of Sweden, how is the position of women in your daily work?
Well, it's a work of progress. In Judaism, we do not have the hierarchical structures as you have in the Catholic Church or in the Protestant Church. So that gives us a much greater liberty, because basically what can happen is that a Jewish community just decides to accept a woman as the rabbi of the community, and that's it. You know? And that has happened already in the Middle Ages. There are isolated examples of women who served, usually after the death of their rabbi husbands, who were great leaders of their respective communities. Very often then when their husbands died and they didn't have any eligible sons in the right age bracket to take over, it was not uncommon that sometimes the widows just continued the work and assumed the position of the de facto leader of that specific community. So we have precedents for that. And in difference to the churches, a rabbi is not being a rabbi is not a sacrament. Being ordained as a rabbi is not a sacrament. We use the same term in English, ordained, but basically it's being a rabbi is an academic degree.
So you could be a rabbi and you could work with anything. You don't have to be...
Most of my colleagues, most of my friends who are rabbis who went with me through the training, there's maybe a quarter of us who now work in Jewish communities as community rabbis in a synagogue. The majority isn't. The majority is working as teachers, some are working in fundraising, others are... I even have a colleague who drives a cab.
Why did you want to become a rabbi as a religious leader? What is your aim and purpose?
Well, I wanted to become a rabbi because I was interested in the knowledge. I wanted to study the texts. And then on the way, you pick up the degree. That's how it works in Judaism. You don't have a calling. A calling is a very strange concept to Jewish ears. You don't get called.
So what do you think when you hear that Christians talk about, I had a call?
Well, that's the first time I heard the term used. There was an interreligious training that I went through in New York, where I studied, in order to become a a chaplain in a hospital, and I was the only Jew in the group, and everybody else was garden variety Christians of all imaginable denomination, and we had to introduce ourselves and what brought us here, being in that course. And they all started out, I'm a Baptist, and a Baptist church, and then at the age of 14 or 15 or 16 or 13, I received a call. Okay. And then the next person, I received a call. And I was sitting in my chair, and then who's calling them?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Now you understand.
Since then I learned a bit or two about it.
Okay, equality between men and women is one thing, but like in your community, in your mosque, Sherin, where you have 3 female imams, how does that affect the spirituality or the way the religion is lived or felt?
When we started the mosque, we didn't knew what the dilemmas would be, but we soon realized that some of the biggest dilemma in the Muslim youth today is the concept of Muslim women's lack of right to divorce and Muslim women's denial of marrying outside Islam. So we constructed a new Islamic marriage contract, giving Muslim women the right to divorce, polygamy is forbidden, if mental or physical violence occur, the marriage is annulled. And we also made a fusion between Danish legislation and Islamic guidance. So in order to marry in the Mariam-moskén, you have to be married according to Danish law first. And if you're divorced according to Danish law, you're immediately divorced Islamically. So in that sense, we are solving a problem concerning violent marriages where some women are trapped in religious marriages that they cannot escape. Then there's the question of interfaith marriage. Today, Muslim women do not have the right to marry outside Islam because there is a consensus among Muslim jurists and Muslim scholars and imams all over the world that if you fall in love with a non-Muslim, he has to convert in order to marry you if you are practicing Muslim. So we have changed that practice, and we have conducted more than 50 Islamic marriages, and half of them have been interfaith marriages, and we have a waiting list now of 20 couples.
I can see that waiting list of people wanting to get a divorce.
Because it is the future.
Yeah. But can you just go against the consensus of the majority of other Muslims in this sense?
Halima Krausen, who is a female imam in Germany, in Hamburg, she was actually selected by the Shia community, male community, to be their female imam. She said things will stay the same until someone comes along and just create that change. And I think that, we will never, nobody will give us the title female imams, and Muslim women's right to divorce is not a case or something that male imams have so far put on the top of the agenda, or Muslim women's right to marry outside Islam. It has never been on the top of the agenda.
They don't give it to you, you have to sort of take it.
No, to us it's not a matter of us, it's a matter of who is coming to us, what are the dilemmas. So we try to find Islamic solutions to existing problems.
Antje, what do you think when you listen to Sherin here? They're changing things from inside by interpreting and doing what they want.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to see how you actually make use of what is inside your tradition and push change. And I think that is a powerful way of doing things. And also what I think too is that we, speaking generally, and also the general Swedish public and society, how little we know about these inside movements in different faith traditions. And I think that is maybe mostly a plea to people like you, journalists, do a better job on these things.
We should. And Madeleine, I'm trying to talk about what changes within the religion, in spirituality, etc., when women are stepping up.
There's a lot of things, but we should also remind ourselves for the Catholic Church that spirituality has been an ongoing thing in the monasteries since early Middle Ages. Women have been strong there, and they have had their own fora. But then we also have to go back to what is most fundamental, and for a Christian it is baptism. And what is baptism? It is that each one is baptized to be Christ. No less, no more, but it is that. And then we are all representing Christ. And it's no difference between a man and a woman. And what is a priest? And this is about spirituality as well as legal things. Well, a priest should represent Christ. So what's the difference between a male priest and a woman priest? Nothing. And we have to teach about this and find our way back to what is fundamental, well, theology, or how faith was grounded once. And this is about the common priesthood for everybody. But also another thing which the Lutheran Church is emphasizing often, but which we also have, and that is that we should always be in reform, always go forward. But we have forgotten that.
But do you
so
see
you have
that
to put these things up again?
Is the Catholic Church doing reform? Is it changing to the better in this sense?
It depends, very much depends on the Pope, on the present Pope. The present Pope, yes, he is changing things, one after the other, but he has also quite a resistance to face. I think that one time everything will just fall down. We will have a change, and it will come brutally. And also, there are many reform movements in the Catholic Church, which we don't know much of in Sweden. One is We Are Church, and then you add the name of the country where you are in. And this is a reform movement both for women and men. Then we are Catholic Women Speak, and we are publishing books all over the world. We have Voices of Faith, which is organizing days on women issues in Rome, in the Vatican. And we are trying to change things.
But is this the reform work going on within closed communities, within the Catholic Church, maybe within the Jewish context, or are you working together in these issues?
We are working together. Christians are working together as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, how about Islam and the Judaism?
We are planning a conference next year. We're going to invite all the existing female imams from all over the world, female rabbis, female priests, and also representatives from the Catholic Church. And then our aim is to try to discuss some of the most acute dilemmas of our times within all religions, because we're all facing some of the same issues. The lack of right to divorce is also present in Judaism, or the right to marry the one you love, that's also present in other religions. Within Judaism, you don't marry outside Judaism as well.
No, in Judaism, but here we are a little bit more egalitarian, because it's forbidden for both men and women to.
In the Quran, it is stated clearly that a Muslim man can marry a Jew or a Christian, but it is not stated that a Muslim woman can marry outside Islam, and it is not stated that she can't, so we use that as our legitimacy, that it is not stated that she can't. But I do believe that even though it's equal to both men and women, it's because everything starts in the family. If we fight for gender equality, we have to fight for women's right to marry outside Islam, and we have to fight for the right to choose your love partner.
Antje.
I think much of this is about how we actually treat tradition and how we beware of traditionalism. And I would like to contribute a quote I came across the other day from a Christian theologian of the Eastern tradition, Jaroslav Pelikan, who said this about tradition and traditionalism. He said, tradition is the living faith of dead people to which we must add our chapter while we have the gift of life. That's tradition. And that's what you are doing. Traditionalism, he says, traditionalism is the dead faith of living people who fear that if anything changes, the whole enterprise will crumble. And that's what I think you are up to.
Well, there might be a little bit of a difference here. In Judaism, we have something that is called Jewish law, halakha. And that is, it's something that governs all aspects of a Jew's life. How you eat, how you learn, how you live your life. And it also affects how you enter marriages. In Judaism, that's a contract that has very specific stipulations between part A and part B. So by its very definition, if you look at the language of that, what you do, it is inconceivable to have that done between a person who is Jewish and not Jewish, because the legal part isn't binding on the person who isn't Jewish. And that is where the problem is when it comes to intermarriages.
Could that be discussed or changed or questioned?
Well, it depends on which part of Judaism you are talking about. There are some, not all, but there are some Reform rabbis who would perform intermarriages. There are many Reform rabbis who don't. But in the movements of Judaism that consider themselves to be more aligned with the Jewish law, and conservative Judaism is one of them, that's a big no-no. We don't do that. We don't do intermarriages. Doesn't mean that we don't welcome an intermarried couple into the community. You know, their kids go to Jewish school or to a summer camp or whatever. That's not a problem. But to have that legal ceremony with somebody who it doesn't apply to is legally, that's an oxymoron.
Finally, let me ask you, Madeleine Fredell, you're having a fight within your church. You're talking about women being silenced. You're doing your speeches. Could you still be an optimist in thinking that things will change little by little, or as a revolution within the Catholic Church?
It's already going on. If you remember, since, well, now it's a decade at least more, we have all these abuse issues, sexual abuses. Now, only during autumn, last autumn, it was brought to the fore that also religious sisters were sexually abused. But not only that, then it popped up, we are abused by power of a bishop or a priest or whoever. We are abused economically. Often sisters work free of charge or with very bad salaries. This is taking in the whole world, of course. And then we are adding also, we are abused because we are silenced. It's the abuse of silencing people. And this was brought to the fore in September, October last year. And now it's a whole movement. And all religious sisters, and we are talking about at least 1 million people all over the world, we have been encouraged to denounce every time we have been abused by a priest or a bishop or whoever with male power in the church. And the abuses are just coming in. And this is going to be a mountain of strength as well, because we are fighting from that position.
Thank you very much. There's a movement going on. Thank you. We'll have to end this discussion here. It could be gone for a lot longer because it's very interesting. But thank you very much, Madeleine Fredell, for sharing this. Antje Jackelén, Sherin Khankan, and Ute Steyer. And thank you for coming and listening.